Tonight we'll take a look at the issues surrounding the decision of the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria to shut down KFC, a food vendor within Nigerian airports. Joining me tonight for this conversation is Dr. Epelle. He's a policy development analyst and convener Disability Inclusion Nigeria. Honorable Bashiru Daudu, who is the Chairman House Committee on Disabilities and Senior Citizens Matter, will join us later on. Dr. Epelle, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Jumoke. Happy Good Friday to Nigerians, and happy birthday to His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, you're the convener of Disability Inclusion Nigeria. This recent incident, what does it mean to you? How do you react to this? And how much work do you think we still have on our hands?
Jumoke, I will look at it in two perspectives. One is the fact that I am not surprised at the level of discrimination and inhuman treatment that is meted at persons with disability, especially this young, innocent man, Gbenga. It is very disheartening, and I strongly condemn the act by these KFC outlets and other organizations or individuals that are discriminating against persons with disability. It is unacceptable and should not be seen in the fabric of our society. However, it is also very important and of note to me the traction, the momentum, how viral the news has gone, simply because this young man is from a privileged family. He's the son of a former governor of His Excellency Governor, former Governor Gbenga, and the quick response of government and several individuals is very encouraging. However, what would have happened if this young man is not from a privileged home? What happened when the likes of Dr. Chike was discriminated against and taken advantage of at the airport? What happens if the unknown individual or citizen goes through the same thing that this young privileged individual had gone through? Now, I'm not saying that it shouldn't make news or be in the headline. What I'm also saying is, whatever is happening right now because of the status of this young man should happen to everyone. It is the rights and privileges of every Nigerian with disability to get the same attention, to get the same response, and greater result, But Jumoke, I know, and I've taken time to research and look into the fabric of KFC, and they're very well known for this kind of acts. 2 years ago in Malaysia, a young woman went through the same discriminatory attitude from staff of KFC, And then, of course, equally a few years ago, there's also a case of in Georgia where a staff of KFC filed a complaint against KFC for discriminatory practice, and he was paid $30,000, as compensation. So KFC is known for this kind of attitude, but also it's also because I like to balance my story. I've also researched and found out that they took some measures in enhancing the inclusivity of persons with disability within their employment. I researched to find out that they had to create even special restaurants for persons with disability, which also violates the principles of inclusion, because you don't need to create special restaurants for persons with disability when you should be creating inclusive restaurants that persons with disability will be part of. So we see these things, and it's very disheartening for people like us who are at the forefront of disability inclusion. But no matter what happens, we cannot give up. We'll keep pushing, and we keep engaging, and we keep demanding for accountability. And I want to use this opportunity to call on government that we need greater, stiffer penalty for KFC. I think the National Assembly, I'm glad my friend, the House Committee on Persons with Disability, is joining us on the program, hopefully. I think the House of Representatives, and I must commend the Speaker, who has been very proactive, the Deputy Speaker, who is a champion of persons with disability. They need to invite the management of KFC, put them on the spot, and demand not just an apology. Do you know the impact, the psychological impact, that what happened to this young man has taken toll on him? Do you know the fear that it has driven around the community of persons with disability, that this kind of inhuman treatment can happen to anyone?
All right, Dr. Epelle, but how much exposure is this issue bringing to the non-implementation or non-enforcement of the Disability Act in Nigeria?
Well, non-enforcement and non-implementation has adverse effect in any aspect of the law. And in this case, one of the things that plays out when there is no concerted effort to implement or enforce, the first thing you get is that there will be a continued marginalization of persons with disability. Continued marginalization of persons with disability. There will also be increase in discrimination of persons with disability, And of course, when acts like the Discrimination and Prohibition Act is not implemented, it will give birth to poor education, because when it's not, when the provision that borders on education is not implemented, what do you get? You get educational gap, poor health outcome, worsening economic condition and inequality for persons with disability. I can go on and on. Of course, there is also a legal dimension and repercussion to non-implementation, because these laws, has its root to international treaties, Convention of Persons, Rights of Persons with Disability, the African Protocol on the Rights of Persons with Disability. When we are not implementing the provision that is in line or in concert with the international treaties and instruments, it's a violation, and Nigerians can be held accountable. So it has a spiral effect from one thing to the other, where people with disability have absolutely no hope in the whole polity. And I think some concerted effort has to be has to be made to ensure that there is a true implementation and enforcement of the Act, even though we are at the verge of looking at the possibility of bringing some new clauses and new aspect of the law in the process of repealing and replacing some of the worn-out provisions.
All right, so we'll come back to the legal angle to this whole issue. But I mean, let's also talk about ineptitude of government. KFC is a private establishment. I want us to talk about accessibility to even public buildings owned by governments. The petitioner in this case says for the past 3 years, the lift to one of the lounges in MMRA has been out of service. This clearly shows that even the government is not doing its own part.
Exactly. Well, my organization and several other organizations that are working in this space, we've been going around the country and doing what we call accessibility audits, an audit of public building, public spaces, public toilets, private entities. And we've done quite a lot of audits across board, and the findings are alarming. The findings are very disheartening, knowing fully well that most public buildings, you'll be shocked, are not accessible. And these accessibility of public building goes from even government institutions, including, surprisingly, if you go around the Aso Rock, you will not say that Aso Rock is in total compliance. So there will be an aspect of the structure there that are not disability friendly. And that is not acceptable, And of course, when we talk about accessibility, Jumoke, it doesn't end with building. Websites need to be accessible. Accessibility means that everyone can have access both to information, space, and the whatever that person wants to have access to, So it's important that to note here that, and very discouraging, that most public buildings and institutions are not accessible at all. But to cry about the problem is one thing, but to talk solution. Now, my organization and several other organizations, and I keep saying that because we're not the only one, and several other organizations are embarking on very strategic but result-oriented measures. For instance, we have gone into partnership with the Nigerian Institute of Architects. We recognize them and the veritable role that they will play if we must achieve accessibility, especially when it comes to structure and also spaces. So the president of that great institution was in our office to sign an MOU with us for us to collaborate, beginning from the day we signed that MOU, 3 weeks ago, I believe. No architect must draw or design any structure without that structure being compliant with universal design. That means it must accommodate everyone. Now, furthermore, we are going to embark, and we started embarking on advocacy. We were at the office of the Deputy Speaker, and the Deputy Speaker, who is a dear friend of mine, has pledged to work with the persons with disability community. The Speaker, is another champion of persons with disability, And of course, we're happy with the selection of Honorable Dr. Bashiru, who is the chairman of House Committee on Persons for Persons with Disability. So there is strategic move, but it's like a drop in the bucket that we want to turn into ocean. It's very, very, very small what we are achieving compared to what is out there. And the more government takes this serious and take strict measure, and also using the likes of KFC as an example of private institution that flagrantly discriminate persons with disability and without a choice, that without any reason whatsoever, you know. So KFC has a lot to do. The public institution has a lot to do, and individuals as well has a lot to do if we must win this race, and we will, by His grace.
Whether or not it was legal for FAN to shut down KFC. As a stakeholder, what does the law say about this?
Well, first, Jumoke, you must understand that I'm not a lawyer, but I don't need to be a lawyer to know the simple, godly, and national laws, you know. First, it was not, it's absolutely legal, based on the provision of the Discrimination and Prohibition Act. It is legal to shut down KFC. And in fact, they should go beyond shutting down KFC to ensuring, I know I've read and people are saying public apology. Public apology doesn't mean anything to me. KFC needs to pay a very stiffer penalty for what they have done. Because even when people appeal to this staff of KFC to be very cautious what he was doing, he or she was adamant, you know. I have experienced walking into one of their outlets, you know, and because of my poor sight, I couldn't see what I wanted to buy. And I was trying to get one of their staff to help me. And you could see that lethargic attitude, very insulting and demeaning look, and almost like, oh no, I'm very busy. Can't you see? You understand? So, and they are not the only one. There are several others. This young man is just a privileged person, an educated person who spoke out, you know. But how about those who have been stomaching this ill treatment and behaving like is the new normal, you know? So the laws supports what government had done, and I think they should do more, you know, and use this organization as an example so that no other person will do what they've done. But there's a whole lot to be done if we must fix the rot. And I think, and I want to believe, that this president, in his seriousness, would take this absolutely very serious.
Is there a need for the amendment of the Disability Act in Nigeria?
Well, the events of what is happening have played out one of the key factors in the act that needs attention, and that is the enforcement mechanism. There has to be clarity on the enforcement mechanism. And if you put up a provision of enforcement and you don't give what is necessary to apply that enforcement, then you will end up not enforcing anything at all. So in terms of what needs to be addressed in the proposed amendment, we're looking at enforcement mechanism, we're looking at economic equality, you know, creating a clear pathway to get persons with disability out of poverty. There's a need to look at the legal aid framework, you know. There is an institution called Legal Aids, but I don't think there is a holistic inclusion of what they can do for us in terms of our inability to afford legal fees and engaging the best hands to fight for us. The Legal Aids Council needs to come clear and support us in this process. The other thing is the engagement of international partners and funding mechanism, which is not very clear in the first the first act that we have put out there. So there's a need to look at some of these issues that needs to be addressed. And of course, the issue of technology, it was not properly addressed in the present act. There needs to we need to look at that again. And there are many things: education, inclusive education.
Right. So I asked Dr. Epelle,
in its broader sense.
Right. So I asked that question because for someone like Honorable Bashir Daudu, he feels like the Disability Act in Nigeria is inadequate. I mean, I wished he was here to help us shed more light on what the House of Reps is doing in this case. He says it does not clearly and specifically address the children with disabilities, does not address gender issues, protection of children with disabilities, and violence against persons.
Mental health. Yes.
Right. So
there's no doubt. Sorry, Jumoke.
Please go on.
Yeah. There's no doubt. And let me also, I don't need an IQ of a mortuary. I don't need an IQ of a legal IQ of a mortuary to know that, that there is no law that is perfect. There is no law that is perfect. When a law comes into effect, there's also the opportunity to interrogate that law and bring up emerging issues, things that were not captured when the law was enacted, and also to look at weak clauses that can be repealed and replaced with stronger clauses. So what we have right now may not be good enough, but it's better for us to have it and then begin to look at the good enough clauses and laws that we need to bring in to strengthen our aspiration and to ensure that we are protected and provided for, not just in line with the Act, but in line with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which is another aspect that the community is looking at, because now we're going through the Constitution review. So it is not a totally write-off law. Rather, I agree that we need to strengthen it. We need to look at the weak links and bring out what will make it better going forward.
Well, so let's talk about the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. Recently, the Commission says it has transitioned from the era of advocacy to the era of enforcement. How will you describe its impact and how can it be strengthened?
Well, I want to say here that we are grateful that this young man, Dr. James Lalo, was chosen as the Executive Secretary of the Commission. I think he's done very well, taking into consideration the very slim purse that he's operating with. The Commission had done well in terms of advocacy, have done well in terms of generating ideas and implementing those ideas. But their strongest, their weakest link is lack of funding. And again, somewhat not too strong capacity in terms of human capital development. They don't have all the technical individuals and knowledge to drive most of the things that they want to do. Now they want to go into enforcement, it's also important to note here that they have a very small team of lawyers within the commission, you know. And so for them to succeed in enforcing the provisions of the Act, that, of course, you know, anyone that have not complied is in violation, you know. Everyone and anyone that have not complied with the provision of that Act is in violation, you know. So my concern is, I would advise my dear friend, James, and his team. We do have a very good working relationship with them. It's important for us to focus and direct our energy in creating awareness for what we want to enforce before enforcing a provision that the people you're trying to enforce those provisions against are actually ignorant of the law. There's a need for greater awareness of the provisions with which we want to enforce before carrying out the physical enforcement. There's a need for very important and strategic motions, even within the House, to pass. And, of course, funding. You need funds to enforce. You need capacity and competencies to enforce. You need courage to enforce. You also need government backings to enforce. Tell me, no matter how the energy of activism in the life of the commission, will they go to Aso Rock and then wants to enforce the, the aspect of the acts that Aso Rock is in violation of? Who will listen to you? How will you pass the gate? And so for me, we need to concentrate our energy and create a lot more awareness of specific provisions that people are in violation of. The effort has always been on accessibility and discrimination. There are other provisions. I was in one of the biggest, one of the big hospitality institutions, and I parked my vehicle and left my driver. And they came there and forcefully asked my driver to move the vehicle. Why? Because I don't have disability. And ignorantly, the young man was trying to defend himself. And until I came out and threatened to take them to court, so that in court, I will go and interpret the fact that I do have the disability. And I'm sitting here, Jumoke, I'm not even seeing the screen. I'm not even seeing the screen. I'm just blindly speaking to you, believing that you're seeing me. So that's part of our issues. And for someone who is ignorant, how can you then go ahead and enforce the person?